What's up, guys? Today we're talking to Dale Fowler and Stephen Grant about the Australian parking market and the transition that it went through that's very similar to one the U.S. is going through today, how Dale got into the parking industry and his journey through it, who Indect is, and all about parking guidance. Hope you enjoy. My name's Lester Mascon, and this is Parker X, and today we're with Dale Fowler from Indect, and Stephen Grant decided to join us for another episode as well. How are you guys doing today?
Great, thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining. So Dale, I've known you for a long time, but why don't you go ahead and give us a rundown of how you got started in the industry, kind of where you started from.
Yeah, sure.
And then what you're doing today.
Sure. I originally started in 1997 in Australia by accident. I was running a chain of retail stores.
By accident?
Yeah, by accident. I was running a chain of retail stores, and I was thinking about just looking for another position.
Okay.
And I was with Wilson Parking, and they actually advertised for operations managers, for retail operations managers. And
Okay.
I applied for the position, and then they offered it to me, and I'd never even knew that a parking industry actually existed up until that stage.
I don't think I did either, don't worry.
I'd been in a car park and paid for it and been horrified by the amount it cost, but I'd never thought about the industry. And at the time, I think the Australian industry was sort of still a bit of a rough operation, and Wilson was really making a firm effort to change it to make so that people were in uniform, they were clean, well presented, and providing customer service.
Okay.
And that's why they were looking for people from retail to try and change that whole dynamic, rather than just getting car park attendants and making them managers who had no background in full blood customer service situation.
Okay.
Yeah, so started.
How long were you with Wilson?
Well, I had a couple of roles there, so I was in operations originally for 5 years.
Wow.
And then went across into equipment.
Okay.
So Wilson had a business called Wilson Technology Solutions, and they were the reseller for ski data for Australia, or actually for the whole Asia Pacific area.
Okay.
And so we did. I sort of came on as, at the time they were just really putting ski data into Wilson sites, and there was some thought that maybe there might be a market for the equipment. And in Australia at the time, it was mainly Federal and Amano that was in all of the garages, and it was all pay on lane, via a booth, attendance in booths.
Okay.
So
Federal did have that really bad pay in lane for a long time there.
Yeah, they didn't do pay on lane in Australia. It was booths only.
Okay. And just exit cashier.
Exit cashier, yeah.
Yeah.
And so with Wilson, we started automating all the garages, putting in command intercoms, CCTV.
You guys had that really brilliant command center.
Yeah, they built that command center, and it started off. I was actually there when we were just testing that idea, like putting stuff in our office and saying, "Can we talk to a site? Can we see what's going on at the site, etc." And so then they built the command center, which was first rate at the time, and
Okay.
I was sort of offering that same service to external clients. So saying to people, "Hey, you could automate your garage." Unfortunately, get rid of all the staff, and but completely change the cost model of the garages. So staff was the major cost.
It was kind of a golden age if you were into doing parks equipment. The transition from exit cashiering to pay on foot was just.
The numbers were crazy.
Yeah.
And especially Wilson at the time had rather than just applying to get a 1 year or 2 year lease or management deal, they were saying to the client, "Hey, we'll 5 or 7 year deal. We'll paint, we'll restripe, we'll put new signage in, we'll put new equipment in, and we'll pay it back out of your revenue." So for an owner, they could get the garages completely renovated, basically, and for Wilson as an operator, it meant for them they had much better tenure.
Sure.
So
Did Wilson focus on leases mostly, or was it mostly managed?
A bit of both. It was a combination. It was a combination depending on who the client was.
Because no one's really done, like, at least I'm aware, like leasing on a bit large scale was done by like Central when it was just Central, kind of on the East Coast sort of thing. But it's not as popular today.
Yeah. No, in Australia, I'm a little bit out of touch with the Australian market. as an operator, but in Australia it really was a mixed bag. I mean, when I was in operations, I was running 35 garages at one time, and I would say a lot of the hospitals and sort of government stuff was managed, and a lot of the building, like the commercial office and stuff like that, was actually leased.
Okay.
But I'm not really sure where that would be now. But yeah, it was great fun. Had lots of staff and all that sort of stuff. But the equipment was an exciting time. It really was. And then I left Wilson, I think it was around 2008, and gradually moved across to Indect. It wasn't an automatic thing. I actually had some time off. We had our first kid, and I did some consulting and stuff like that, and sort of wondered what I was doing with myself for a while. I was lucky enough to have to be in a position where I could do that and take some time off, which was great for the family.
Yeah.
And then sort of I'd been working with the guys from Indect for a couple of years and helping them out on some side projects and stuff like that, and we ended up putting together a business. And that was primarily in Australia. And then we brought that business to the US informally with people like you back in 2011 with Sentry, and a few other people in the US on a very small scale. But then, and the market was very green then. No one really understood what parking guidance was. They couldn't understand the cost. It just seemed ridiculously expensive. I was literally coming and trying to explain to people what we did. They had no concept of what we were doing. And then it took off. We got John Wayne Airport with Sentry. Then we got Dallas Fort Worth Airport directly.
DFW, that's got to be the big one that really kind of put things on the map, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially because we got to do Terminal A originally as a 3-stage project because it was a construction project.
Yeah.
But we got to do Terminal D straight on the back of it, and then they did E straight after that as well. So that kept us busy for 4 or 5 years. And, that because of that, really, we established the office in Dallas and set up a full-time operation here. So we established that in 2013, and it became fully operational around 2014. And Indect USA was born, and that's when I moved over here with my family. And now we've just opened our second office in Denver, and I think we've got just over 160 sites now in the US. So
that's amazing.
It's really, as a concept, exploded in the US, and it's becoming. I don't have to have that conversation anymore about what is parking guidance. Now it really is much more about how will it benefit my operation.
So, give us a rundown though on. I think everyone knows what parking guidance is, but tell us what's Indect doing that's special with parking guidance, and kind of so someone that doesn't know as much about it. Why should they do parking guidance? What's Indect doing special with it? Give us the pitch.
So I think one of the key things about Indect is that we do everything across the parking guidance world. So a lot of people are doing either one technology or they're doing one type of system, and they're trying to leverage that into every site. Indect is a manufacturer based out of Austria, and because of that, the people in the team are all parking people. The owners, Ingo and Richard, have been in parking since the 80s. So I've been in, obviously, for over 20 years. Even Stephen, who works for me, has been in parking for 10 or more years. And we look at things more as solutions. So we do entry and exit counting. We do level counting systems. We do 2 different types of ultrasonic sensor, a short and a long-range one. We do a camera system. And they're all part of the same platform. So you can have a mixture of these systems, hybridized systems. And one of our early systems, John Wayne Airport, was a hybrid. It was a level count system and then single space on the short-term parking.
Yeah, it was.
And then now, now with our big systems, Houston Airport. So at the moment we're doing Houston Airport. I think it's about 12,000 spaces, and half is ultrasonic and half is camera. So they've decided on a hybrid system, and they've done that because they see benefits in both types of technology for different reasons. So the ultrasonic system gives you incredibly long lifespan, has a really good cost of life because it lasts about 15 or more years, and is super accurate, virtually no maintenance.
So how long has Indect been putting systems in?
Since 2003.
So that's the first Indect system went in 2003. Is that system still working?
Yeah, they're still working, yeah. We've still got systems. And the technology it was built on we know of systems in Europe that Ingo and Richard were involved in when they were working at Skidata. They built systems and that are still operational since the mid-90s.
Wow.
And they're still working. So they phase them out. So what they do is they'll phase out a line of sensors and then use those as spares to keep that bit operational. And then we put in new rows of sensors, as you know. So that's how the longevity it is.
Jump in, Stephen.
So, yeah, I've got like a question on, the fact that I would say some of your competitors are going mainly with a camera-based solution. So why are they going with, like, when you were saying like one solution, whereas you've got a hybrid of solutions? Do you have an opinion on that?
So we see a couple of things. So in Europe, there's very, very few camera solutions. Europe's been doing single space since the early 80s. And we find that the markets that are after camera solutions tend to be younger markets where people are still having trouble understanding how the costs add up and how the return adds up. So they're looking for additional features. Now the cameras definitely offer additional features. There's no doubt about that. The fact that you can capture the license plate gives you a unique identifier for the vehicle. And then when you've got that unique identifier, you can do all sorts of cool things like find my car, premium rates, tracking vehicles, black and white listing. You can do reports on who's parked where and when and all that sort of stuff. But like in Europe, for example, there's a lot of issues around privacy, which are causing problems with the camera systems.
Okay.
Even in America, we've got one state, we've got hospitals that are saying they can't use camera systems and they can't use LPR because of the HIPAA legislation in the hospitals. Because they're not allowed to capture people's license plate. Now, this is what the state attorney general in Texas is saying. So he's saying we've just done a system for MD Anderson, and they will not allow license plate recognition. Now, if you take the license plate recognition and the unique identifier out of the camera-based system, then I don't think the camera-based system makes sense. And the reason is, although it's got similar cost, it's got half the lifespan.
I wouldn't even say half. I mean, is it really half? Is it going to be?
Well, we think
5. Is it going to be?
We
10
think
years?
it's 7 to 10 years.
7 to 10 years.
Yeah, and we've got sensors that are out there now that are camera based, which are 7 years old.
Okay.
And they're not failing yet, but they do have a processor in them, and they've got a camera in them. You know, and we all know that processors, the manufacturers tell you they last 7 to 10 years. So this is going by what Texas Instruments are saying about their processors. That could be the lifespan. Now, obviously, they won't just die. They'll slowly start to degrade. Yeah, that's right. And all of a sudden, there'll be maintenance costs, and there'll be question mark about maybe they'll realistically last. They could last maybe 12 years because it's worthwhile fixing them for a stage. Yeah,
maybe doing an upgrade to the board or something, or changing out a part or something. But
yeah, so
it's certainly not the worry-free 15-year ultrasonic where you just put it in and don't even think about it.
But so we definitely
jump in, Stephen, if you got something.
Yeah, no, the more you talk about it, the more, the thoughts that I have are like, the ultrasonic seems so simple to install. You leave it alone, and the reality is, and this is kind of my challenge as a consultant, is saying, hey, the camera bases have all these features and functionality that come with them, but are we really using them to their maximum intent? And it seems like there's not as we need to put more education or focus on these great features that come with it, rather than just seeing it as a piece of hardware that's out there in the lanes. Do you think? Do you agree?
So two comments about that is, one is also the ultrasonic is more accurate than the cameras. We see it. We've got a high degree of accuracy with the cameras. We're comfortable now. We offer people 99.5% detection with the cameras. But some instances will just fool a camera. It may only fool it for a short period of time because of the way our algorithms work, but some instances will fool a camera. And we believe that accuracy is very, very important. What's our thoughts about guidance is that customers want to know that when they go to a level and it says there's 3 spaces, they want to get one of those 3 spaces. And if that's wrong, they'll ignore the system and they'll think it's a pile of rubbish, and then you've wasted your money on the whole system. That's my feeling about it.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that's exactly what happens if you start getting bad information. You start ignoring it.
You start ignoring it, and in which case it's just a waste of money. You're really putting Christmas lights almost, red and green Christmas lights. But that being said, sorry, I've lost my train of thought there.
With the camera versus the ultrasonic, and then the what's the best for each facility?
The features that you've got.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's what I was going to say. Is so one of the things that I find sort of interesting is a lot of people. We've got over 30 of these camera systems in the US. And hardly anybody's using any of the features of the camera. So what we're seeing is people talked about Find My Car. They talked about all this stuff, and we've actually supplied the features to the site, and they've never used them for various operational reasons or whatever. They're just not using the detail they're getting. I think at a management level, they think this is going to be amazing, the data we're going to get. But at an operational level, it ends up just being left to run like a parking guidance system.
I think that's the experience that I've had, and all the ones that I've done. They just kind of, it sounded really great, and they really wanted those things. But unless you have somebody on site that's like really owning the system, who's going to do something with the data, it's going to be proactive.
The cool example we've got here, actually we're at the Pi conference, and we had a meeting yesterday, and we've nominated one of the customers here in Chicago for an award at the Pi conference. And Michael Prussian is his name, and he has a number of garages around Chicago. He had this idea of having premium parking level. So we've installed an absolute system, a camera-based system, just to look after about 44 spaces on one level of a garage and another 4 spaces on another level, which is slightly different, but it's the same concept. And we did an interface to TIBA and to HTS, which is an LPR system.
Okay.
And TIBA is a revenue control system, and also to Park Connect, which is a revenue control system. He has 2 revenue control systems on the one site to handle discount parking tickets, like Spot Hero type tickets you buy on the web.
Yep.
And his idea is he made this one level of the garage. He made the lanes wider, the striping wider. He repainted it, put in new lighting, and he calls it premium parking level. And so people can come in and park there, and they pay a higher rate. So even if they come in,
and it feels premium, right? Too, because it looks nicer.
It looks nice,
and it feels
and
nicer.
It's right by the front door.
Okay.
And say if you're a person who's got a discount ticket online, if you come in and park there, you still pay full price. So he gets people. He can. And also say if a monthly parker wants to come in and just wants to run into his office and grab some paperwork and then run out, he can choose to park there, pay a small fee, but to just park for the convenience. And
that's really interesting though. So even for the regular parker that shows up with a discount coupon or whatever, you're like upselling.
You're upselling
a parking product once they're on site.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and the big thing, I don't know, the big thing that Michael was telling us and why we nominated for the award. Well, one, because it was technically quite a challenge to do really 40 spaces. We did all of these interfaces, but he's gone from that area used to turn over 1 time a day, and now it's turning over 4 times a day.
Wow.
And so he's now, that we came in early because we went and did a site visit, he's doing it at another site now, and he said he's going to do 2 more this year. So he's, and again, only a small area, 20-odd spaces. So the other thing we're doing, exactly the same concept.
Yeah, that's one of the areas where I thought that everyone thinks about parking guidance when they're doing it for these massive structures and all that, and I always thought they could be the most valuable for a 20 lane or a 20 space, 50 space.
So I've got a great story about that.
Facilities.
I've got a great story about that. But yeah, so the other thing he's doing there is charging his EV stations. So he's got the same system on the EV spaces around the corner from the premium. Okay. And if you park in the EV spaces, now you pay for charging.
So, EV spaces, Stephen, that's probably a good one for you too. Not to jump off topic here, but I think the problem with all the EV spaces, they don't do the whole garage, and then all of a sudden somebody occupies the space for the entire day. Now you've just lost your EV space for the entire day because someone's not going to come down and move their car.
I think enforcement of the EV spaces is a problem.
But are you going to go to work, park in the EV space, and then come down and move your car 2 hours later? I mean, is that not really practical?
Well, no. But I mean, I think that's where having the camera to have like maybe a blacklist.
Yeah,
things
or
like that,
or if you get a certain rate up to 4 hours, and then you get a nasty rate after 4 hours. And
Oh, that's a good idea.
yeah, and I think that's what we're talking about here with
Okay.
Michael, was actually enforcing like a high rate for people who camp on the EV spaces.
Okay.
But see, that's the thing. Once you've set up that information, you can set up the rates in the parking system
It's actually to
whatever
actually
you
do
want.
that extra
Yeah,
charge
so,
on
so
there.
the charge is happening in the revenue control system. All we're providing is where the car is. And by matching to the HTS, which is the entry and exit LPR system, we've got extremely high accuracy rates with the LPR, because even if our LPR reads poor, we can match it up to the HTS one based on time of arrival.
So you're matching two existing plate databases to come up with which of the vehicle
Yeah,
actually
and
is.
saying that the HTS one is always right, because that's one the revenue control system has.
Okay.
Yeah, so we did a bit of fuzzy logic there, and that's made it really work well. We don't have to read the plates well. All we need to do is match it to a ticket.
Got it.
So that's working well. But going on to your topic about small garages. So in Europe, our main market is garages under 100 spaces. And it's because...
Makes sense.
You think they make their profit out of the last 5 spaces. Yeah, so if they're leasing or managing, whatever, it's the last 5 spaces where if you can turn those over, that's where you make your money. And people need to have some security to know if I drive in there, I can find a space. And we just had a great example of it. We just did a tiny garage called The Merge down in San Diego, ultrasonic system. It's just a dead end. It's only 55 or 60 spaces. It's small. It's just one little level under a mixed-use development. We had a slight delay on getting the sign delivered because we got this nicely fabricated sign for the entry to fit on this particular island and etc. And so we were running the system without the electronic sign. And what we could see was, then we put in the sign and we ran a report, and we could see that the garage was only about 30% occupied without the sign. With the sign, it's now 95% occupancy every day. So people can see that there's 20
actually
spaces
there
and they're driving
trust
in.
that it's there.
I think that goes to one of the most important and kind of undervalued issues with guidance is the importance of signage in the correct location. And it just seems to me that, when on some projects I've seen where signage really just is kind of an afterthought. And it seems to me it should be the first thing.
And also, like, say even on bid packages, we see a lot of bid packages that come out and signage, it just has a scope like must include signs to guide customers and must be 5-inch red-green digits, which is an old spec, say from Daktronic, where that's what you could buy 10 years ago in the US market. And so, like, for example, we just did recently the Des Moines airport with Stephen, so we're going to give him a little pat on the back here, because the group there, the bid actually had a signage package, and to price it, you had to price the signage design that was there. So they had layouts of all the signs and where they were going to go in the bid package. And that does two things. One is it makes sure that the system is 100% there to guide people, because otherwise it's open to interpretation. And some people might say, just a sign on each level is enough.
I think people take advantage of it, right? So they see the lack of specification around sign, and they're offering like, okay, like one sign per level is good enough, right? And all of a sudden their proposals
that's
like
what we
low.
did. I mean, that's when the airport, when we were. So I was the consultant with Michelle at Des Moines, and we spent a lot of time and effort walking the facility to say what our proposed signs were going to be, but kind of left it to the experts to respond, and so there is a bit of leeway there when we had our specifics as to had to fit the Des Moines airport colours and everything else like that, but really looking at the guidance system providers to really say, hey, this is based on our expertise and experience. This is where the signs should be going to fully utilise the guidance system that's going in.
And the signs are a huge chunk of the cost.
Well, absolutely.
And even some signs like your entry signs, I've seen when you get some really nice architectural style monument signs at the front of a garage, they can sometimes be 20% of the cost of the garage. Now, someone could put a box on a post for $1,500. Or you could also have, some architectural sign that costs $40,000 or $50,000 out the front, and it's very hard, I think, for customers to assess that. So I think planning the signage and is really a big part of these bids, especially for large facilities like airports and shopping malls.
And I've seen some systems too that aren't even dynamic. They're like just yes, no, or just sort of like, yeah, there are spaces or they're not.
Yeah.
And yeah. That lack of clarity. It's a good thing you're bringing some clarity to that part of it, because that was always really fuzzy.
Well, it was based on previous, projects.
Okay.
Where it came off and like, gee whiz, really got to. It just became so apparent during the project how important the signage was, and it was, when I think that's just a huge component of making it not only successful operationally, but the design, I think, of guidance system implementation, especially with cameras, can be quite challenging. I think the ultrasonics it seems to be just really kind of fairly straightforward, whereas the design phase of a guidance system project with the cameras, there's a lot that goes into that, and the heights and everything like that. And I think that the signage just often gets left to the end, and I think that I've learned that that's one of the first things that needs to be done.
Then clients can see a price that looks really attractive too when the signage hasn't been done properly on one bid compared to another, and then
or they get a hell of a shock after they've signed the contract and they get hit with some change order that could be half or more of the project cost. And I think you and I were in a bid at MGM where they had trouble understanding the cost differences between multiple bidders, and what it came down to was sign quantities.
They picked it up in the end though, and all of a sudden it was like, wait,
yeah. I think we had, from memory, 400 or 500 signs in our package, and
compared
and
to
one
like
of
100 or something.
Yeah, so I mean, you can see it's a world of difference.
And I think signs make a guidance system live and breathe. If you don't sign it properly, that's the worst mistake you can make.
I think it's even more critical with the camera-based systems, because a lot of the camera-based systems are utilizing one light display for 4 or 6 spaces, so it's not as intuitive for the client. I mean, we also offer the system with an individual light for each space, but it's not quite as intuitive for the client, so they rely even more on the signage to get them to where they're going than the lights. I don't know how you feel about that, but
I agree.
I think, to me, and it was also a big part of the accuracy for us, we actually never viewed the lights as a guidance tool. We actually viewed the signs as what does the guidance.
Absolutely. What
happens is when it says 2 and you turn and you look down a row and you see 2 green lights, it's like the customer goes, that's what the 2's about. There's 2 green lights, and they get down and there's 2 empty spaces. And then the next time they come, when we see sites that have been up and running for a few months, and you can stand when these garages are getting quite full, and you'll see people just follow the signs. They don't circulate anymore at all. They just
go after the signs.
They follow the signs because they go up to level 2 where it says 20 spaces, and they get on, and then they see 2, and they just turn around the corner and go. They don't stop and look anymore.
When we did MGM, I mean, they followed our guidance on a lot of the stuff. They didn't do level signs. They did exactly the way you'd want to do it. They did one number at the front of the garage. And then once you got in, then it started giving you guidance on where to go to the available spaces. But they didn't. I mean, I always thought it was the worst thing to like give you 8 levels of data about where the spaces are available when you pull into a facility. I mean, you forget it all as soon as you pull your ticket.
It's too much data to read entering a garage, I think, and I also think as an operator, we were always get them in, get their money sort of thing. And as a user, if I saw there was 100 spaces and they're on the 8th level on the roof, I might be inclined to try an alternative garage. Whereas if I get you in and drive you up to the roof and I get you there efficiently, well, you're going to park and pay, aren't you? So I think from an operator point of view, I think level count, this whole monument sign with levels on it could actually deter some customers from entering the garage.
So what's the future of Indect look like right now? Like, what problems are you trying to solve for customers going forward?
So one of our main things that we're rolling out at a few sites at the moment in the US is an outdoor camera system.
Oh, really?
So we've got an outdoor camera system for counting. But what's really interesting and sort of technically interesting about this product is we have a version of it which uses a PTZ camera.
Okay.
and it zooms in and reads the license plates after the vehicles have parked.
Really?
So the idea is so that the camera-based systems are now cover the entire parking lot, not just the undercover parking.
So what sort of like area could you do? Like 100 space surface lot with one camera? Or
It
is
depends on the
multiple?
height of the camera.
Okay.
And because what we're doing, we're looking at the back of every second row.
Got it.
Yeah, so you're looking across the driveway to see the back, and then so you have a camera on each end, one looking at this way and one looking on the other way. And
Will you ever bring that to indoor as well, or does it need the real height?
it needs the height.
Okay,
Yeah. So
just to get the angle of view.
you can do 3 rows at about 20 to 24 feet.
Really?
And then if you go up higher than that, you can do a 4th row as well.
Do you have any problems with like keeping the camera stable at that height?
Well,
Like wind or
it's about
anything?
poles and walls and stuff like that. So one of the sites we're running them up is Brookfield in Milwaukee.
Okay.
And there we've got this shopping mall. So we've got these great big concrete buildings, and
Well, that makes it easy to
it's easy.
bolt it to it. Yeah.
We are seeing about 100 spaces, and we've got a great angle to zoom in, and that's why we're using the PTZ. We're not actually traversing it; we're just zooming in to catch the plates.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't want to traverse it because it'll slow the detection down.
Yeah, I would imagine it would.
So that's we've got that rolling out, and I think that'll be a nice add-on to the system going forward. We're also doing a lot more of these fully variable signs now. We call them matrix signs, but the sort of signs you're seeing on the side of the freeway now with video on them and these video walls. We're doing a lot of that now, and that's becoming a big part of our. So in the old, like we were talking about monument signs. I don't know how many meetings you've been in where there's arguments about what this sign's going to look like, what colour it's going to be, what the logo's going to be. So now we just give them.
It seems to be the hottest topic usually is what the housing of the sign's going to look like.
Yeah, and so now we give them instead of video wall, and maybe so we just did one at Dallas Love, and I think it was huge. It was like 90 inches by 60 inches.
Really?
And then they set it up as a monument sign. They got the red level 1 and how many spaces, EV, ADA. They're putting.
They can do whatever they want.
And if
they
they
can
change their
it.
mind,
Yeah.
they can change their mind, and they could even put a message up there: this garage is closed due to whatever reason. So it just gives them versatility and means that they're not locked into what they're doing.
Are you guys really marketing the signage side of it? Because that seems. I mean, so Index always manufactured their own signs. Are these all manufactured by Index?
Yeah, they're still all coming out of Index. So we have the 7-segment signs, which are your standard counting signs.
Yep.
And you know, we obviously do different sizes of those and different colours. We're now offering an RGB version of that. But I think, I mean, for me, there's a little bit of extra cost in these matrix signs, but it's not a huge amount. It's just a little bit of extra infrastructure cost.
Well, I mean, if you're going to put up a big sign, you might as well make it where you can put other information on it if you need to.
And I think even in the lane signs, because in the lane signs, for example, you could have information telling people how to get to a space, but say if it's an event garage, you could then flick them to have exit information on the way out, or you could have half the sign with counts and the other half could have best for Best Buys, but if Best Buys ever moved, you could change it to best for whatever, and you can do all that in your software. So it just gives you flexibility. If you ever redid anything with the garage, or you say this is going to be an ADA area or this is going to be an EV area now, you don't need to buy new signage. You just change what's on the sign, and I think to me, I think that makes sense. And they're getting cheaper and cheaper. That's the thing. So they're going to get, like I said, their cost for cost, they're getting similar now to a standard sign, but just a little bit more infrastructure cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about one of the challenges I see is employee parking and the abuse of let's just say abuse of employees parking where they shouldn't be. Is there I guess is the blacklist is that the best type of like enforcement from a guidance system perspective to kind of try and handle, you know, making sure that the employees stay on the roofs or whatever they're supposed to be and not in actual customer spots, you know?
Yeah. Look, I think the blacklists obviously help. I mean, there's things you can do with revenue control systems, as we know, like nested areas and having like dual anti-passback, so people have got a time period to get to a nested area and get out. There's things you can do with LPR systems, so you could have LPR at the entry and say no. That you could have blacklist LPR with, say, a standard LPR off-the-shelf system. With the ultrasonic system, we always had timer. So we always had the ability.
I think you have to have the camera in place to be able to do like notification someone's parked in this wrong zone or something like that. I would think.
Yeah, so the camera, that's where the camera does give you that extra information about the blacklist and being able to identify the employee. But you can also automate it. You can automate it because you've got the license plate. You can actually create an enforcement report automatically. But with the ultrasonic systems, we used to do timing as well, and so that worked really well in, say, shopping malls or places like that where the average length of stay of the client was generally 3 or 4 hours. So you could then start picking up people who are parking for 6 or 8 hours by identifying them. One site that comes to mind is Dallas-Fort Worth. They have a 2-hour parking zone, and it's prime parking right up by the terminal. And before the Indect system went in, the average length of stay in there was like 5 or 6 hours.
How were they measuring it before? They just
so when we first put it in, the data we got from it when we first put it
before
in.
you turned the lights on and did everything. Okay.
And then after we put we set it up so that the light changed color and it would flash if you overstayed.
That's what we did over at John Wayne as well, and it works brilliant.
Well, people, when you come back in your car's got a flashing pink light over it, you know you've been caught, sort of thing. Yeah, and it clears it out, and the average occupancy of that area now is like 20%.
So I always thought it would be the best thing to do, like at John Wayne, is if once you see that an enforcement officer comes by, instead of putting a ticket on their window or whatever, you've got the license plate. Just add it to their fee of their ticket.
Yeah.
Add the penalty right to the ticket. It'd be so simple to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you could do it through the revenue control system.
Right through the revenue control system. They pay their fine before they leave.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, what about, I was at Intertraffic last year, and it seems like there's a lot of new entrants to the guidance system market, because I think in the US it's obviously been dominated by a couple of firms. Are you seeing new players coming in from Spain or Korea? This sort of Asian manufacturers.
They've always been there. All the people you see at Intertraffic I've seen at Intertraffic over the last sort of 15, 20 years that I've been going. But what the difference is, the European market, there's lots of providers because it's in every garage. We were in Spain and Portugal recently with my family, and we're in these little villages out in the mountains. You drive into the parking lot and it has a parking guidance system in it. Yeah, every in these little medieval villages, they're everywhere.
Wow.
And like I said, every garage, the garages we're doing there are often 100 spaces, 80 spaces, 60 spaces. They're tiny by US standards at least. But what I think is happening there is that especially with the European providers, they're doing so many small little jobs, they don't actually make enough money to launch their product overseas and to push it offshore. So that
makes all the sense in the world, right? It's a lot of money to get the product here.
And to set up an operation and all that sort of stuff. And these companies might do 20 or 30 jobs or 40 jobs a year, but that might only mean that they're making $1 or $2 million a year. So they're not necessarily huge operations. There's always been Chinese product available on the market, and there's been Korean product, which is the Koreans actually, I believe, had one of the first camera-based parking guidance systems in the world, which came out of Korea. There was 2 early ones. One was from Germany, around about 2001, 2002, and there was one in Korea around about that same time. So Korea's always been, quite advanced as well, but I think the Asian countries have struggled to bring those products to the West because there's questions about quality, and there's also questions about documentation. So people bring them over and they have trouble with the documentation. They don't really know how to put them together, and then they can't get support, stuff like that. So
it can't all be IKEA.
That's right. I think there is another thing to be said about it. In Europe and in Asia, the garages are indoors, often climate controlled, so they'll have air conditioning or heating, and they're fully enclosed. They're kept away from the elements. So this means that you can have sensors with a lower ingress protection rating. So ingress protection means getting moisture in them or getting dust in them, because there's not moisture in the air. In the US market and in Australia, we have a problem in that a lot of the garages are open to the elements. They're above ground. They're multi-deck.
Yeah.
They're not closed. I've got garages in Colorado where I've got snow on the floor.
Des Moines.
Yeah.
Des Moines has several feet of snowdrifts.
Yeah,
coming
in the garage.
In the garage.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
garage.
Wow.
And it mucks up the counts because they have to kind of come into the entry and exit gates with the snow plows to remove the snow that's gathered up into the garage.
Wow.
So
Yeah, and then we had a 100-degree fluctuation in temperature in Des Moines. So in 1 week, about a month ago, there was 100 degrees fluctuation in 2 or 3 days in temperature. So those products don't see that, and sometimes what happens, you see them come to the US, they do 2 or 3 installs, and then they have problems with the sensors all dying in the first 12 months because they get moisture inside of them.
Yeah.
And so this is why we've always banged on a lot about IP ratings, IP65. So if you bought a light fitting for a garage, you wouldn't buy anything less than IP65 if you asked a building engineer. So all of our products are IP65 or better. And that
I remember when you brought the first cameras over, they popped on the plane because they were too sealed.
Airtight. Yeah.
The housings popped.
Yeah, because they were IP67, but they were completely airtight. So when they were in the plane, they popped. So now we had to put a special Gore-Tex layer in them so they can breathe. They've got one-way breathing in them. But yeah, it's that's why we bang on a lot about ingress protection, and I think that's been one of the reasons why we've been successful. Is
the product lasts as well.
The product has lasted, and there was some people there'd been some false starts in the US market. There's a laundry list of companies that have come and gone over the last 9 or 10 years, 9 years that I've been coming here. I've seen competitors pop up and disappear, and but because it's easy to win 1 or 2 jobs. I think we all know that. It's the hard thing is to get repeat business and to have a product that's going to last. Yeah, so and I think that's where we've been successful, fairly successful, as the product's proven to work in the US market. In sort of most pretty much any condition, and it's been reliable.
That's good. You want to add anything, Stephen?
No, I mean I think it's I would say it's a good parking guidance system install really does make a big difference to the customer's experience.
I would agree completely.
And a bad one or not so good one, I think, has a pretty negative effect. And it's all supposed to be there for customer enhancement. So I think the good installs work really well. Yeah,
and they generate a lot of publicity. So we always see whenever there's a good system goes in, it's one. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. It's the one thing I've done in parking where people thank me. So when as an operator taking money off people or catching staff stealing money or whatever, it was a bit of a thankless business. And even with equipment. Revenue control equipment. I mean, we had some great results and really turned some businesses around and made huge differences when we automated their garages. But on the other hand, I remember walking into a garage in Melbourne, and the staff saw me walking in, and the girl in the booth started crying because she knew she was losing her job.
We used to have that happen in DC too. Yeah, you come into the garage, you saw the attendants at one facility, and next thing you know, you're chasing them from garage to garage.
Yeah, and they know you're like the harbinger of doom, So, but in guidance, over and over again, we get thanked, and it's if you ask any of the people that work for me, they'll tell you it's amazing how much positive feedback we get, and I mean even funny positive feedback. We got involved with a hospital that was a class, like a 7-star building. They were recycling water off the roof, solar, all this amazing technology. And the guy who was leading it said, "I've just built $1 billion state-of-the-art hotel, and all anybody keeps on saying about is how good the parking guidance system is." And amazing. He said, it was like $1 million out of this whole project, and who cares, sort of thing. But it's people care. I mean. And he even went on to say, all the doctors ever ask is, where's my office and where's my parking spot? It's funny how it's one of those things we all have to do with parking. It's a first and
last impression, right?
Yeah, and we all have to do it, and we all hate paying for it. But, I think if it's easy, then people respond to it. And that's been one of the things, say some of the shopping malls, they'll often introduce a system when they want to bring in rates, because it takes the heat off the introduction of rates.
Well, that's why MGM did it.
Yeah.
They wanted to make sure they were offering more value to the customers that were coming in.
Yeah, and I think we're all used to paying for services if they're delivered. You know, we've
I agree.
all got no problems if it's about convenience, and so we don't. But it's got to be convenient. You know what I mean? And we don't want the parking to be a headache for us. And as long as we know that we can get a spot and we can get it relatively quickly, I think we don't care about paying a few dollars for it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, we're going to wrap up. Thank you guys very much for joining us, Stephen, again. And Dale, that was fantastic.
Oh, no, it was really great fun. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
What's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to learn more or they want to get a hold of you personally? Or
yeah, there's the Indect website, indect.com, or indectusa.com. They all sort of link together. But if you type in Indect, you'll find us. We come up pretty high up on the websites. And my details are on there. So my cell phone number and my email numbers, my email's on there as well.
Perfect. Cool.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yep. Bye. Hey, so thank you very much for listening. If you made it through this far, I really appreciate it. We're very excited to be bringing this to the industry. There's not really anything else like it. Once again, this is Lester Mascon. Name of the podcast is Parker X. Please like it. Please share it. That means the world. Please share it and rate it and tell us what you think of the show. We're going to try to keep doing a bunch of these, and your comments and feedback is really important. Also, if anyone else would like to be on the show, please drop me a line, and we'll be happy to get something put together. Thanks.